Hey, what's up? I'm Construct, part-time trade chat terrorist and full-time bag getter, and I have a confession. I can't cook. It's true. In my 13 years of playing World of Warcraft, not once have I taken the time to learn how to cook. But today that changes, as I've decided to turn a new leaf and become the greatest cook Azeroth has ever seen by learning every single recipe that classic World of Warcraft has to offer. I mean, it's only 79 recipes and I've already got 4 of them out the way, so surely it won't take that long. Probably a few hours tops. Anyways, let's just get started. Now my plan of attack is simple. I've divided the recipes into 3 groups: trained, looting, and questing. Now, training is the easy part, as I happen to be absolutely breaded, pun intended, and willing to spend gold. Getting my cooking to 300 and collecting the trainer recipes along the way was a moderate cakewalk. So allow me to tell you how to get there. The first thing you're going to do is just make spice bread until you get to 40. You just buy the spices from the vendor until you can't level up your cooking anymore. Alternatively, you can just buy charred wolf meat and take it from level 1 to 65, but it'll cost you an extra like 5 silver each, which might be incredibly expensive for my average viewer. Next, you take boiled clams to 110. For all of these, I just bought the mats off the auction house because since the addition of the regional auction house, mats are legitimately dirt cheap and I wipe my ass with 5k gold. Once you get boiled clams to 110, you can continue to take it as far as you'd like, but I personally just made crab cake up to 130. After this, you're going to be taking curiously tasty omelet all the way up to 175. Now, this is the first recipe you're going to have to get by yourself, as it's not provided by the trainer. Getting this recipe for the curious tasty omelet is pretty difficult, as you're going to have to go all the way upstairs and buy it from the vendor on the 2nd floor of the Pig and Whistle Tavern in Old Town Stormwind. After this, you're going to want to fly on down to Northern Stranglethorn Base Camp, pick up the recipe for Roast Raptor, and take it to around 225. If you think flying down to Northern Stranglethorn for a recipe is annoying, do I have news for you. Next, you're going to want to fly all the way to Felwood and get the recipe for Monster Omelet. You're going to take this to 250. There are of course alternatives to all the running around I'm giving you, but hey, on the bright side, you're killing birds with rocks, or whatever the phrase is. After this, you're going to be making juicy bear burgers up until 285, where you'll hit what seems to be like a brick wall, where every recipe turns green. Well, fear not, because there's one recipe that you'll be able to get that'll glide you up to 300, but I'll get to that later in the video. Now that we've gotten all the trained recipes, we can move on to stage 2 of my 3-step program, vendors and looting. When I say that this will literally take you all over Azeroth, I mean it. The 20 different vendors you're going to be visiting will have you bouncing around like a pinball across old world Azeroth. Now, I could go into detail and explain the route I took, how much things cost, towns, and feed you other random information that any other creator would do to stretch the time. Or, I could swiftly summarize what to buy, where to buy from, and who to buy from. First, from Kinder Grabanka, you're going to buy the recipes for Beer Bastard Boar Ribs, Blood Sausage, Cooked Crab Claw, Crockless Gumbo, Crockless Steak, Curiously Tasty Omelet, Gooey Spider Cake, Gore-Tusk Liver Pie, Murloc Fin Soup, Redridge Goulash, Seasoned Wolf Kebab, Succulent Pork Ribs, and Westfall Stew in the Pig and Whistle Tavern in Stormwind. Then, you're going to want to go all the way downstairs to buy the Smoked Sagefish, Sagefish Delight from Erica Tate. Next, you're going to want to no-clip through the fireplace to Arathi Basin, where you're going to buy the Roast Raptor from Hammond Karn. Then, you're going to want to go to Northern Stranglethorn to pick up Jungle Stew. After that, make your way down to Booty Bay, pick up the recipes for Giant Clam Scorcho, Rockscale Cod, Mithril Head Trout, My Fish Steak, Cooked Glossy Mitefish, Filet of Redgill, and Hot Smoked Bass from Kelsey Yance. Next, go all the way to Feathermoon and Feralus, and pick up the Baked Salmon and Lobster Stew recipes from Viviana. Then, you're going to want to head over to Northern Desolus and pick up Mystery Stew and Heavy Kodo Stew from Janet Hammers. After that, make your way up to Felwood and pick up the recipe for Monster Omelet as previously mentioned from Maligan. After that, you can head back to Stormwind and pick up the recipes for Rainbow Fin Albacore and Bristle Whisker Catfish from Catherine Leland, the fishing supplier. Next, fly down to Goldshire and pick up the recipe for Longjaw Mud Snapper from Theron Bowden. Then, fly down to the southernmost point of Westfall and get the recipes for Clam Chowder, Slither Skin Mackerel, and Spiced Chili Crab. After that, go down to Booty Bay again and pick up the recipe for the Undermine Clam Chowder. Now, this is a recipe that there are a limited supply of. From the posts I've read, it's on a 30-minute resupply timer, so if it isn't there, you can either run some errands and come back, or just watch a video or something and wait for them to resupply. Next, you're going to want to head to Gadgetson and pick up Tender Wolf Steak from Dirge, who we will be revisiting later. After that, head to Loch Madan, pick up the recipe for smoked bear meat from Jack Roughcut. Finally, the last vendor you're going to be visiting is Kara Deepwater near the shore of the loch in Loch Medan, and pick up the recipe for Loch Frenzy Delight. Now, as an Alliance enjoyer, this isn't all of the recipes, as there are some that are horror only. Thankfully, I can just pick them up off the auction house for 1,000 times the vendor price, because I have money like that. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't all the Horde vendored recipes, so I'm gonna have to boot up the old cowboy. The first Horde vendor I visited was Abigail Shield in Brill to pick up Crispy Batwing. Next, I made my way to Falcon Wing Square in Eversong to pick up the recipe for Link Steak from this knife ear, whose name I'm not even going to try and pronounce. Then, I phased into Bloodhoof Village to pick up roasted Kodo meat from Wanna Darkman. After that, quick trip to the Ghostlands to collect Crunchy Spider Surprise and Bat Bites from Master Chef Moldier. Finally, a trip to Dustwallow to pick up the recipe for Heavy Crocolisk Stew meant I had finally collected every single vendored classic recipe. That being said, there were still some open world recipes that I still had to get from mobs. I booted my main back up and made my way to the Southern Barrens where there are these critters called Digrats. Killing the Digrats drops, well, Digrats. However, if you get lucky, one of them might drop a bloated Digrat. Now, opening the bloated Digrat on its own doesn't do anything, but if you're standing next to a cooking fire, you get the recipe for Digrat Stew, which I fortunately knew to do beforehand so I didn't make the grave mistake of having to farm another bloated Digrat. After you get the recipe for Digrat Stew, fly over to Dire Mall, where you're going to kill Pusilin for the Run Tum Tuber Surprise recipe. While running this instance, I learned that you can in fact not cut this corner. Thanks, Blizzard. Fortunately, the drop rate for the recipe is pretty high, around 88%. However, it's not 100%, so you may not get it on your first run if you're unlucky. The last looted recipe you're going to get will take you to the Razorfen Downs, where you're going to make your way to the murder pens and click on this bag where you'll get your final looted recipe, Gold Thorn Tea. Now at this point, you're in the end game. Every single trained, vendored, and looted recipe is now yours. If you were suddenly teleported back to Classic WoW, you'd be like a really good cook or something. However, you wouldn't be the best, as there are still classic recipes that you don't have, which takes me to the third and final step in my master plan, questing. The first quest I took was from Dirge in Gadgetson, who we visited earlier while picking up the recipe for Tenderwolf Steak. He's going to ask you to collect a bunch of mats that I didn't care to farm and just bought off the auction house because there's one in Gadgetson. After turning in the mats, you are taught the recipe for Clemlet Magnifique, putting you 2 recipes away from hitting the cycle. Next, you're going to make your way to Azure Mist Isle. Now I know, you're probably thinking, Construct, isn't this a TBC zone? And to you, I say, you cannot put a bucket over a pig's head as you'll only make it skinny. You're going to pick up the Great Moongraze Hunt from Acteon at Azure Watch, and after turning it in, you'll get the recipe for Roasted Moongraze Tenderloin. Meaning there's only one recipe left to get, Smoked Desert Dumplings. For this, you're going to want to cross the desert sands of Silithus and make your way to Cenarian Hold, where you'll be able to receive a quest from Kalandrat the Innkeeper. This quest is only visible when you're at Classic Cooking level 285, so make sure you're leveled before you have to make your way back out here again. The quest is going to take you out to the Twilight Base Camp, where you'll run into the Druid bots that farm the mobs endlessly for transmog. A quick turn in and turn around takes you back to the inn, where upon turn in, you receive the final recipe, meaning that not only have you collected every single non-event classic era recipe, but you can reach 300 cooking. 15 smoked desert dumplings later, and it's done. It's over. You've completed the classic cookbook and reached the top of the mountain. Of course, there are time-walking locked recipes as well as holiday ones to acquire, but besides that, you're at the summit of classic cooking. You've become the best chef on Azeroth at last. Anyways, thanks for watching. This video is actually super fun to make and put together, and I hope this style of educational content was interesting or made good background noise while helping guide you through something or learning or whatever. We'll definitely do more stuff like this. Anyways, as always, peace.